Assalamu alaikum students. Lecture number 14, Second Year Computer Science. Chapter number 2, Fundamentals of C Language. In our today's video, we will continue the topic variables and we will study the declaration of variable, types of variable in C language and initialization. In our previous video, we have seen the variables and constants. First, we will revise a little bit. Now the variable is the value which can be changed anytime during the execution of program. Therefore, it is used to store the data that might change during program execution. However, constants are those values that do not change during the program execution. Therefore, they are used to declare something that won't be changed during program execution. Now, more specifically, the definition of variable is a space in computer's memory, which is set aside for the certain kind of data and given a name for reference. So there are three important points in this definition: that it is a space reserved in memory, and it can store the certain kind of data, and it is given a name. Now we have seen that rules of naming the variables in our previous video. In our today's video, we will see that what are the different kinds of variables and how much space is reserved for each kind of variable. Now the primary data types in C language are integer, floating point, and character variables. Now our today's lecture will start with a variable declaration. Now you can declare and use more than one variables in a C program. But before you can use any variable, it should be declared. Now what do we mean by declaration? Now declaring a variable tells the compiler the name of variable and its type. Now the syntax of variable declaration is data type. You have to write down that what is the type of variable you are declaring, and then you can write down the variable list, that how many variables of this type you are declaring. Now the data type must be a valid C data type, means you can write the int, float, and char. And the variable list may consist of one or more variable names, which are separated by comma. As you can see in this example, we can write the int. Then we have written the I, comma j, comma x, comma y. So these are the four different variables, and they have the common type that they all can store the integer values. The next statement is float fh. Now there are two variables f and h, and their type is float, means that they are storing the values with a point in them. Now the next statement is char ch. So there are two variables c and ch, and they are of the type of character. They are storing the characters. Now the second topic is the types of variable in C language. Now the primary data types are integer, float, and character. In our today's video, we will see the types of integers signed and unsigned. And in the signed, we will see the integer, or you can say the short integer and the long integer. And in the unsigned, only the short integer. The type of floats will be the float, double, and long double. And the character has the single type of char. Starting with the integer, you know that the integer is used to store the numbers without the decimal points, and they can store positive as well as a negative number. Now usually you declare the integer by writing int and then the variable list. But you can also include the type qualifiers. Means the declaration can be preceded, means that before the declaration, you can add the type qualifier. Now what is the type qualifier? You can write the short or long or unsigned or short unsigned before the declaration. Now these type qualifiers tell us the number of bytes which will be used for storing the integer on a particular computer, or how many bytes the compiler will reserve. These type qualifiers tells us. If we have written only the int, then it refers to the short integer and it will reserves the 2 bytes in the memory, and the value which it can store is -32767 to 32768. This is the range. From this range you can store any value in the int. If you have written the long int, then it will reserve the 4 bytes. Like here, we have written the long int number, then the name of variable is num, integer is the data type, long is the type qualifier. 4 bytes will be reserved, and the minimum value which you can store will be -2147483648, and the maximum will be 2147483647. Now these both are signed integers, mean you can store both positive as well as negative number in them. In the unsigned integer also reserves the 2 byte, but only the positive numbers are stored. Now the smallest value which can be stored is 0, and the largest value which can be stored is 65,535. By default, when we write the int only, then it assumes that it is the signed number. This type of variable is declared. Next type is the float or the real number, and it is used to store the numbers with the decimal points, and it can also store the positive as well as the negative numbers. Now the important thing about the floating point number is that they are stored in the memory in 2 parts. The first part is the mantissa, in which the actual number will be stored, and the second part is the exponent, the power to which the number is raised. For example, if you have written the 5,000, then it can be stored as 5 multiplied by 10 raised to power 3. Now some example of floating point variables: float base height, 2 variables and their type is float. Double float AB total, double is the type qualifier, float is the variable type, and AB and total are the variable list or variable names. Long double float, long double is the type qualifier, float is the data type, and count is the name of variable. Now number of bytes which are set aside for these type qualifiers by compiler is, if you have written only the float like in this example, then the 4 bytes will be reserved, and the minimum value which could be stored is 10 raised to power -38, and the maximum could be 10 raised to power 38. Now 6 to 7 digits of precision, the precision means that the accurate number of digits after the decimal point. For the double float, 8 bytes will be reserved. Minimum value will be 10 raised to power -308, and maximum will be 10 raised to power 308 with a double precision, 15 digits. Long double reserves the 10 bytes, and the smallest value could be 10 raised to power -4932, and the maximum value will be 10 raised to power 4932 with the 30 digits of precision. Now the floating point is stored in the 4 bytes, so the 3 bytes are reserved for the mantissa, means the actual value, and the 1 byte is reserved for the exponent, means the power. And from these 24 bits, the 1 bit is reserved for the sign, that it is positive or negative. The floating points could also be represented using another method which is known as the exponential notation. The third type of variable is the character, and it stores a single character. The example could be char, this is the data type, ch, letter and answer are the variable names. It reserves a 1 byte in the memory, data type is char, and the value is any character from the C character set, which we have studied in a previous lecture. Now we will come towards the types of error. Now each type of numeric variable has a maximum and minimum limit. So when a value assigned to the variable exceeds its maximum limit, then an overflow error occurs. I'll take you to the previous slide. Now you can see that the maximum value for the integer is 32,768. If I'm going to store the 35,000 in the integer, that what will be the result? It will give me an error, and the error will be overflow error. Similarly, if I try to store a negative number in the unsigned integer, it will again give me an error, and the error will be of underflow error. That when a value assigned to the variable is less than its minimum value, then an underflow error occurs. Now the third topic of our today's video is variable initialization, and it means that we are assigning a value to a variable. Variables are initialized with an equal sign, which is followed by the constant expression. As you can see, like the declaration, you have to write the data type, you have to write the variable name, then you will put a equals to sign, and then you will write down the value. As you can see in this example, integer x equals to 10. This means that the value of 10 is assigned and it is initialized. Float y equals to 20.3. Along with the declaration, you would giving it a value, so it becomes initialization. And char ch equals to a. And whenever you give any value to the character, you have to write it down in the single quotes. So the a is ch is assigned the value of a. So this was our last topic of today's video. Variable initializations means that assigning a value to the variable with a declaration. So this was our video today. I hope that you have understood it. Thank you for your attention.